So I would do some things that Chris has done with West Vancouver. So some things that they did differently than our board is, if I were to start over, we started on our own working with ALP. So that was great that we brought ALP in. They were a great help, advanced learning partnerships, but we didn't have other districts there. I'm envious of West Vancouver. They've got a network of other districts that they worked with their ministry as well. So that's one thing I would do differently. I would also limit the number of tools that we started with. We started with lots and lots of pilots, but we were spread thin, trying all kinds of pilots. So I would decrease the number of tools we were working with. And the other thing I would try and do a little bit differently is we're now into year 2, or our full year of implementation. Some of our enterprise folks, so I mentioned HR and finance, they're still waiting. They're waiting for extra help and assistance. I would make sure that in year 1, we included bringing in extra help, not just the academic side, but the non-academic side. So those are 3 things we would do differently in our board.
So just to be clear, there are many boards and districts in Canada doing really great work in the area of generative AI. As somebody who's helped lead that, I can tell you, I can name them all. That said, it seems that both Chris Kennedy from West Vancouver and Tom D'Amico of Ottawa Catholic are getting a lot of recognition around that one, largely because they're first, but also because of their willingness and generosity to share, and indeed both of their reputations in their entire careers as being leaders who have advocated for innovation and the use of technology. So that's why they're getting all of the requests and wonderings about what they're doing. And so I thought it would be prudent for me to bring the both of them on just to talk in more detail about their journey. They get asked to do these kinds of presentations quite a bit, and they are really anxious to invite others. So if you listen right to the end, they'll give you some other boards that they are finding a lot of learning from them as well. And this clip that I shared from Tom, I think really speaks to my own and ALP's own learning about the generative AI work. And that is that doing this in a cohort model is really the ideal way to do it. We have some great successes with districts who have done this work on their own, largely just because for many reasons, the cohort model just didn't materialize or didn't work out. It wasn't because anybody was against that model, just that the opportunity may not have been there. But in the cases where that has been true and is true, it's just fantastic to see the way people are grappling with this issue together. And I think that's one of the things that is most exciting for me is the ways in which people are embracing the complexity and the challenge of this in a way that there's not a panic about it necessarily, but there's certainly a level of urgency to let's get this going. We've got people asking questions. We realize this is facing us every day. We cannot avoid this. This is just not one of those things people have tried in the last maybe year or two to put it aside, but it's just not possible anymore. So that's why I think that's it. But both of them just share so many great insights about the things that their individual districts have done, their teachers are doing, the things they're thinking about. And I hope that sparks some really interesting questions for you, whether you're leading a district, whether you're a teacher, whomever. Generative AI is here, it's happening, and it's been exciting to be able to work with people like Tom and Chris and their teams in leading this good work. So enjoy today's discussion with Tom D'Amico of Ottawa Catholic School Board and Chris Kennedy of West Vancouver Schools. Enjoy. All right, I don't know if you guys have counted, but just ballpark. Since you got started with AI, how many times have each of you get a request to share either virtually or in person, or just want to know what you're doing? Tom, how many would you say?
I haven't counted, Dean, to be honest with you. We're just happy to share. And I know we have staff in different departments that are also contacted, and they're happy to share. But every week we are sharing with other districts on a regular basis. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Every week we get some requests. Carrie's Wilson, who's out doing a lot of workshops for us. A lot of people interested in our documentation too. I think people, especially because they enter it into with the, oh my gosh, we need a policy or we need something. They want to know what we've done in terms of that side of things. And so they're really appreciative, I think, of people sharing those first stages of documentation that districts have come up with.
Tom, your guys' webpage is outstanding. And do you get a lot of feedback on that particular, or have any sense of like how often it's being referenced, used, both internally and externally?
Yeah, the two areas that people are going to, one is the website, but it's a website for parents. There's also a website for staff. So we've made all of those resources accessible, and then people can adapt them to their own needs. A lot of it is really branded OCSB or specific to our board. But if it gives another district an idea of, yeah, that's something we would do a little bit differently, but here's how it'll work for our board, there's real value. The other thing that people are using is the use cases that we did with Adele and with C21, because the 1 to 2 minute videos are really useful to hear from practitioners. So it's one thing to hear from a old guy like me who's at the board office. It's very different when you're hearing from a colleague that's working in the same position you are, right? Whether it's an educational assistant or a teacher or a vice principal or principal, and a 1 to 2 minute video, those have been really powerful to share.
And those are growing too, Tom. I check it from time to time, and all of a sudden I see a whole nother column or list. So that thing is just going to keep going. Is that kind of the plan?
Yeah, we're doing an AI certification program now, and we've said to anyone that's taking part in that program, if you want to capture a 1 to 2 minute video of how you're using AI, share it with us, and then we'll have more use cases that we didn't think of, and that's what's powerful.
Tell me about this AI certification you got going.
We have three main tools, or four main tools, but three tools that we've licensed. One is Brisk AI, School AI, Quizzes, and then Google Gemini. So we're running 5 1-hour sessions for staff. We have about 240 people signed up. We do the 1 hour after work hours. They can do it synchronously or asynchronously. And they get certified in the end of each of those tools. So we've had some good success, and it's nice to see people that are not just educators, but support staff as well taking part. And they're learning how to use these tools, and then they're applying it in their own area. If they complete all 5 modules, they'll then receive an OCSB AI digital badge and certification.
Do you have is that part of other micro-credentialing that you guys do?
Yeah, the other micro-credentialing we're currently offering at our board is deep learning. So we offer a deep learning certification program. So it's following the same idea. You do this
Right.
outside of your regular school hours. You're working with colleagues. We provide a coach to each subset of colleagues. And the business partners have been excellent. So they've agreed to look at, for example, you can go on and do a 1 hour session for School AI and get certified in School AI. So we give them the option, go and do that with the business partner or do it with us. And either way, you're going to get that certification.
And is there, value just beyond the learning? Is there any other kind of benefits or something that go with that certification?
Some will use it because they have interest in additional levels of responsibility. So if they go to an interview, they can say, I'm AI certified with the board's specific tools, which I think is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
For many, it's how can I use this in my job? And I'm with many other learners that can help me along the pathway. And I have office hours or someone I can connect to. So our goal is more the fact that we want to give the skill sets to our staff. If they then choose to use that for different areas like job applications within the board, that's just an added bonus.
So Chris, I know one of the things that was discussed early on, and even as we were part of both your boards learning, you don't need to buy a tool. Like part of it is like you could just really prompt engineering and all the high level skills, what you want to build, that literacy, and that those would be transferable. Both you and Tom and other districts as well have said, no, we agree with that. And yet we want to actually invest in some specific tools. Just maybe talk through that, because I know with other boards, they ask me about that all the time. Should you or shouldn't you? And I don't know that there's a should or shouldn't, but I know that you had specific reasons why you thought that was a good choice for West Vancouver.
Yeah, I definitely think that's sped the process along. I'm finding that when I'm interacting with boards that haven't picked a tool, they spend so much time talking about what tool we're using, and they're using multiple tools. In terms of just training and support, I've often said, like, we've got the best tools that we think for now, but we're not married to them forever. We use Brisk AI like they do in Ottawa Catholic. We use something Magic School AI, which is different, but does some of the same things that Tom speaks about, some of the tools that they use. And that's really given us at least a common discussion point for us to have, that when we bring folks together, that it's not like I find that you can spend so much time debating, should you do it in Gemini or ChatGPT, and you're showing all the differences, and like that exhausts all the energy of the topic, and you actually never get to what does assessment look like, and how does that actually improve my practice? And because you spend so much time learning the tool. And then I just think for students in classes, bouncing from class to class with staff using different tools, again, you're reteaching tools in every classroom rather than at least having a common experience. And so we've gone for the common experience right now, but being super open to we might not be using these tools 2 years from now that we're using today, and then having those on the cutting edge in our district, always out there looking at 3 or 4 other tools ongoing, what other tools are available, and just experimenting with them, and then maybe bringing them into our suite that we endorse as a board.
And then I know both of you maybe even come at it a little differently, and many of these tools are designed for students to use. Some of them aren't necessarily. So I just wonder how you're approaching, all right, here's a suite of tools. To what degree are you encouraging, obviously you're encouraging teachers to utilize these tools, but to what degree are you encouraging student use of them, especially taking into consideration age of consent and all of that other part of it? I don't know, because I know that was part of a lot of people's implementation is like, before we get to the students, let's make sure our teachers are as well-versed and trained in these tools as we can. Not that students aren't already using them at the same time. It's not that you're trying to stop that, but you're just not emphasizing that. So I don't know if you had a philosophy around that or the way you're implementing teacher versus student.
Yeah, we're seeing a real difference between younger and older learners. And so when I'm working with high school students, I ask them what AI tools they use, and virtually 100% are using ChatGPT. And that's in their own way to support their own learning. And then they say, but in classes, I'm using Magic School and with these teachers who are using it. With our younger learners, they're almost exclusively using the tools that we're using in school. So it's for us in a K-7, 8-12 system, our elementary school learners are largely using the tools that we provide for them, Magic School AI. And in high school, we're finding that our high school students are on their own. Most are using ChatGPT with a little bit of Gemini and maybe a couple other things on the side. But it's interesting to see that difference that we're seeing. And on the staff side, staff are using largely ChatGPT to support themselves in terms of as a professional. But then as they work with students, they're using the tools that we provide for them and that we recommend.
What's that look like for you, Tom?
Yeah, very similar to what Chris shared. I would say the number one tool our high school students are using, a combination of ChatGPT, but it's also all the tools, the free tools from Meta. So all the Meta AI, so through Facebook, through WhatsApp, and through Instagram, that's their go-to. So that's one of our concerns and why we're teaching AI literacy is they go with the freemium versions because they don't want to pay for anything, but they're giving away a lot of privacy and security by using the free tools. In school, we definitely focus on paid tools. Similar to Chris in elementary, they generally don't know that they're using an AI tool. So our number one AI tool in elementary is Canva. And they don't even recognize the fact that it's using AI. They're just used to the digital tools. Or it could be a literacy or numeracy, a map tool that they're using, Magma Map, for example. And it has some fabulous built-in AI tools. There's a bit of a difference. In high school, because of Gemini for 13 plus, they do have access to Gemini in class. And so we're encouraging that. But teachers still have final say when and if a student can use an AI tool during class time.
Speaking of that, Tom, both of you have a lot of resources to create the boundaries or the pathways of when to use AI, when to not. All of that is partly, not exclusively, to help address assessment questions and so forth. How have those guidelines and frameworks that you've established been helpful for teachers and potentially not just eliminated problems, but also enhanced the way in which people use it effectively?
Last year, we spent a year of learning. So last year was our year of learning. And by June, our goal was to have our website filled with resources for our staff, and many of the documents that you're talking about, we created. Wherever possible, we went with one-page infographics for our staff, so it's easy to use. When to use AI, we looked at the work of Leon Furtz from Australia, and we based our model on his work. So everything from traditional learning, which means no AI, to AI as an innovator and he as a thought partner, so the teachers can choose. So those have helped them. They can look at it and realize they're still in control. But the one thing we did say to our staff was always relying on traditional learning and not allowing any AI in your class is not acceptable. And the reason it's not acceptable is be innovative is one of our strategic commitments. And you're not being innovative if you never allow the use of something that can be transformative in education. So that's a key area that we use. We gave them a tool to try and look at assessing AI tools from a privacy standpoint, and anything that the board licenses, the main tools I mentioned, we do a full privacy impact assessment before it's posted on our board. But we're not restricting staff from using other tools. Chris mentioned Magic School. If they really want to use Magic School, they can use that tool, but they have to do their own assessment. And we've given them a one-page guide that they can use. So that's been helpful.
West Van.
Yeah, a similar influence. The Australian influence is the colors, the colored approach, and red assignments, yellow assignments, green assignments. I try to model it. Even when I write, I write a blog post, I would say I treated this like a yellow assignment, and I link to what that is, how I've used AI in terms of producing whatever work I produce for that given task, and saying, well, this was more of a red assignment. I treated that. I didn't use any AI, and try to just get more comfortable with the language. Another thing we've tried to do is really encourage our staff to have an upfront discussion at the beginning of an assignment with students around AI, even if they're not comfortable with it, but just to talk about it, because it seems as though those jurisdictions that are getting themselves in the most trouble are ones where there's just a misunderstanding about how AI is allowed to be used. And yeah, sometimes teachers say no AI and the student uses lots of AI to create a piece of work. But I think often it's not really clear to the students in advance. And then the students do what they think is right, but they hide it a little bit, maybe what they actually did. And then they submit something. And then the teacher says, no, I can't accept this because this is used AI to help create this. And I think really trying to get in front of those conversations is something we've focused on a lot this year. If I was to identify somewhere we have to get better, I think more using that language of the colors, more green assignments. So what do green assignments look like in high school English? Or what do they look like in senior social studies? And so more good examples. Like, I think people are actually philosophically in pretty good, oh yeah, this makes sense. We've moved a long way, but they now need to see concrete examples in their subject area of what those kind of assignments look like.
This makes me think of Tom's, and I know you got some too, but Tom's use cases, right? Like maybe a green in a social studies looks different than a green in a math. Like the nuance of this is so fascinating. But so and this happens all the time, but I was in Montreal last week and ask everybody, these are relatively new people to AI, working in boards and districts that haven't really developed a lot of policies, but asking what their number one concern is and their colleagues' concern. And of course, it's plagiarism. That's was the first one. So my question would be to both of you is, to what degree has that maintained or maybe not maintained it being a top AI concern in schools? Have you seen that decrease? And how, again, obviously, if it's a decrease, we would probably give credit to AI literacy combined with some of these frameworks. But just, have you seen a rise in cheating? I know one of the stats that we share in our presentations from Stanford, where it talked about cheating didn't change before or afterwards. And it was funny because actually, Tom, in your board, I was having a conversation with one of your leaders who said to me, I don't know if I believe that. And again, there's probably data out there that might suggest kids are cheating more. I guess part of it is defining even what is cheating. But I guess I just wonder, where are you at with the plagiarism conversation after your year of learning? And then I'd like to hear Chris here share where they're at as well.
Yeah, it still has to be front of discussion with all of our staff, because that was the resistance in 2022 when ChatGPT came out. Everyone was afraid everyone's going to cheat and everyone's going to plagiarize. So we quote the same study. We also talk about Turnitin, their study of 2 million papers, and I think 3% of all of those papers had 80% use of AI. So we share those, but people don't care when you share research unless it's relevant to their particular classroom. So there's still that fear. Our greatest resistance, I think would be fair to say, is our high school English teachers to the use of AI, because they're very fearful, not in a negative way, but they're fearful that it will negatively impact kids contracting out their learning. They don't want them to do that. And we agree with them. We don't want that to happen. So what we've done is we put together a network of English teachers, and they meet to talk about what are their fears, what successes are they having, how are they improving the writing process using AI. That's, again, way more powerful than someone from the board being part of that network. They are their own network, and they're sharing success stories. But at the same time, we still hear from many educators across the board, how do we make sure that kids are not just handing in an assignment that uses AI? So that's an entry point for us to have a discussion about the assignment, to look at how can you move from being worried about kids contracting out the entire work to AI, to kids using critical thinking and improving their writing, improving their assignments, getting in a lens that's other than their own world lens through the use of AI. And that's where we've really focused on critical thinking. And that's part of our teaching of AI literacy, focus on critical thinking. That allows them to use it in a positive way. But I still think, Dean, for the next 2 to 3 years, we will still be talking about plagiarism and how we can change our assessment practices, our learning activities, so that we're less worried about plagiarism and we're more concerned about enhancing students' work as a tool so they're handing in something at a higher level.
I'm very curious about this English group of teachers because I think I think you're spot on. That's where the big challenge comes in. So I love the fact that they're trying to be proactive, and I don't know if they've come up with any kind of interesting, I don't want to say solutions, but strategies, I guess, to try and utilize that. I'm sure they have. I don't know if that's shareable or could be shared at some point, but I know that would be something that people would be very curious about, because part of it is you actually have to take the time to have the conversations. I'm with people having conversations all the time. And unless I take a real deep dive into saying, all right, how do I structure an assignment so that this kid is still going to experience all the struggle that goes with reading that they ought to struggle with, or writing that they struggle with, and yet AI still lives there. So that's a hard conversation. There's no solutions.
We're seeing the same group. Our humanities teachers in the high schools are the ones who are we're seeing them, some who are moving back to more traditional and some moving more innovative. And so we have this chasm happening a little bit. Some who want to do more pen and paper, more in-class writing, while others are really trying to figure out how they do these new kinds of assignments. And so you have these different groups. And so similarly, we're trying to bring folks together and to acknowledge, like, this is a massive shift in their practice and in terms of in their assessment, and not to dismiss the challenges that in particular our humanities teachers face right now around this work. And another piece that we stood out in our high schools is just this idea that teachers are using AI to create assignments and students are using AI to help do those assignments, and that teachers are using AI to help assess those assignments. And so at what level does AI play in all aspects of this? Because we have some teachers who are showing some phenomenal ways that they are using AI to help build assignments and to help give that feedback on assignments, knowing that students are using AI in the creation of that assignment. So a little bit of the, hey, what are we doing here? Conversation about, and what is it we're assessing, and how do we get authentic assessment in this, where at all stages of the process, there is an AI component.
Yeah, again, these are the fascinating, rich conversations. But I think both of the three of us were around back in the mid 2000s when sort of the Web 2.0 came out. And I don't know if you guys, there were so many like amazing moments at that time around what technology could do. The first time you showed somebody Google Maps or whatever, and they were going like, this is amazing, right? There were a lot of those kinds of moments. And then we seemed to, all right, then social media, I don't know if it had the same kind of effect. It was certainly something different. But I really do feel like I have seen people get really excited about the possibilities of AI in an educational context. So I wonder if either of you have any kind of stories, whether it's a teacher or a school leader, anybody that you work with, that you can think of that really, like, again, Chris, I think about the day I spent filming some of the folks in your board for the C21. And I mean, they really did demonstrate, especially I remember going into Mashif Chugani's class, and like, he was just like jacked to see what AI might be able to do to help him organize his world or save him time. Just that excitement was visceral. So I don't know if you got any stories on the holster about colleagues that are really excited about what they're doing because of the possibilities of AI.
Definitely, he's a good one. And I shared one with you about an educational assistant a couple months ago who had, on her own, had gone and was adapting assignments and just was finding these ways that the student was feel engaged in a classroom in ways that they never could be engaged before. And we didn't, and I would go, who is this educational assistant? And nobody even knew her really. She wasn't a huge in the technology world or put herself out there as a leader in the school, but had found ways just with her own learning around AI to have a dramatic impact on what she was doing with a student in the classroom. And it's funny how in the beginning, I never contemplated that educational assistants would be some of our main leaders with AI. And that's what we're finding actually in schools. And their stories are so powerful because they're often working with learners who have some of the greatest challenges in terms of being engaged in the classroom and ensuring that they are connected to what's going on. And and those stories then resonate with people. I think people go, wow, that's pretty cool when that happens.
Nice. Got any stories, Tom?
Oh, I have lots of stories. I'll share two, high school and elementary. So I'll start with the high school. And this was an English teacher. So an English teacher, a fabulous teacher, Erin Doak, 15 years in the classroom. She had a student, they were working on a writing activity, and he just couldn't process what she was trying to get them to do. So she had the student go to resource, and she called the resource teacher and said, he's struggling. He can't really work on this activity. Can you give him some help? Resource teacher called the teacher at the end of the day and said, he just doesn't get it. I'm not sure what else to try. So that English teacher then said, I'm going to try AI. And she used one of our tools, School AI, to create a bot. So it's a very common language instructions, so no programming, anything like that. And she asked the bot to personalize based on his preferences. She gave a little bit of his profile. The next day, she sent him to resource, and he went to resource to work on the same activity. The resource teacher called back and said, he gets it. He spent the entire time interacting with the bot. It was a fabulous activity. He's now ready to return to class, and he understands everything you were trying to teach. And what she said in her use case was, it wasn't about the tool. It was about the student outcome and doing things differently than she could have done in the past. So that was a fabulous example to me with a veteran teacher using AI in a transformative way.
And not feeling threatened.
Sorry, go ahead.
And not feeling threatened by it.
No, it was just another way of helping the student understand what she wasn't able to get through in a traditional activity.
Nice.
Elementary teacher, grade 4, invited me to see her class. I walked into the class. They were using a math tool. Student was wearing headphones, was speaking Vietnamese to the computer, was speaking back Vietnamese to the student and explaining the math concepts. Teacher said, I never could have done that. I don't speak Vietnamese. It was able to take my learning activity, translate it to the student. He could correspond, get the language back. So just a fabulous use of AI within one of our math tools to teach the teacher's math concept. That particular tool, since September, our students have used 99 different languages. There's no way our staff could go through 99 languages. The tool itself is available in 140 languages. I never would have guessed that our students would have spoken 99 languages. That's a grade 4 to grade 8 tool. So two really good transformative uses of AI.
And are you still speaking Korean, Tom?
I have not had to use that, but yes, I've used AI with some of our visitors to translate some of our messages we use a tool called HeyGen, and it's able to translate us speaking in different languages.
Speaking of that, I know, Tom, when you were using that, you were trying to get feedback from whether it's the Koreans. Was this weird? Did you like it? Was it helpful? Like, what have you heard from when you've used those translation tools?
Yeah, it's really important when we go out, and if I do a video to our parents and I'm speaking Arabic, I don't speak Arabic. So we have to, one of our guiding principles is being transparent. So we tell them, here's the English video. Here's the one that's translated into Arabic with the director speaking Arabic. If there's errors, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. It's been positive. So that feedback's been very good from our parents. We've mainly used French, Spanish, and Arabic in our translations. However, I've heard from staff, they don't want to see me speaking French using an AI tool because they're teaching that language to the students. So that's important feedback as well.
Interesting.
When it comes to our staff, they would much rather me find a French native speaker to put that messaging out. So we're hearing both, and we'll continue to monitor that before we continue to expand into too many other languages.
And it makes me think about, and Chris, I know at our last session in February, we had the First Nations Education Steering Committee because people are they want to be sensitive to those kinds of issues. So I don't know if you have heard anything more from the Indigenous community in terms of the role of AI, good, bad, or otherwise.
That's our latest documentation. We just published that and started sharing that out in terms of guidance around linking First Peoples principles of learning to AI. And you get, like in any broad community, it's such a wide range of views. Some of our Indigenous leaders are excited about the opportunity around language preservation. The local Squamish language there's not many speakers of it. This is an opportunity to spread that language and to have more people learn it. And that's exciting. But there are also others are concerned about how this is just taking their history and washing it through technology and producing artifacts that are not authentic and created by them, that are made to look like theirs. And it is a super complex, but I think of one of those, something we didn't do off the bat that we're doing now. And my recommendation for folks getting started, we have something called the Indigenous Education Councils in British Columbia that are attached to each school district, is to work with them around their thinking around AI and to have some principles ensure that you're working with your local Indigenous communities as you grow your AI usage, and so that you're in a line with where their thinking is as well.
I mean, yeah, because I was talking to somebody the other day, like British Columbia has, like Tom was talking about 99 languages in his board. I think there's around 99 Indigenous languages in the province. It's a crazy number. And so the potential for AI, but I mean, again, as you said before, it's not quite as simple as, hey, just use AI and it's going to solve your problems. There's cultural sensitivities and things to explore that we wouldn't be able to do without that partnership. I was grateful that they can participate and continue to do that one. So you mentioned a little bit about, the next sort of thing you're doing now. To what degree, Tom and Chris, is what's the next thing you're trying to accomplish? Or is it just like, all right, we've got where we're at now, we just have to level off and just keep building on the literacy we established? Or are there some things, because in this changing world, right, stuff will come up that'll spark us interest, saying, hey, we have to now pay attention to this. And I mean, Tom, if folks don't know it, you're winding down your tenure at Ottawa Catholic, but I know you've got good hands of people that are going to be continuing that work. So I don't know what the future holds for both your boards.
Sure. That's important that it's not an IT initiative. So it's not just about IT, it's covering all areas of our board. So where are we moving to next with AI? We're going to continue, obviously, in the area of numeracy, literacy, and student achievement. That's the key focus of why we're doing this. But we're also interested more on the enterprise side. How can planning and facilities, HR, finance use some of these tools to help find some efficiencies? So that's an area we're just in the early stages of exploration, and we want to learn from other districts in that area. Yeah, I'm anticipating 3 to 5 years for full system scale. So this is year one. We want to continue to scale to make sure this reaches every student, every classroom. We want to partner with some of our business partners as well as universities to look at measuring the impacts. As we know the tools are being used in our classrooms, is it really helping with student achievement? So that's an area that we will continue to pursue. And an area of real interest to me is the well-being of staff and students. So I'm really interested in how we can partner with some of our local hospitals or other clinicians to look at well-being. So right now, we know students are turning to ChatGPT and other areas on the internet to get mental health and well-being advice. I would much rather that come from clinicians who can target supports through these chatbots, but target supports to our students that will be localized in the Ottawa community. So that's another area that we're looking at developing.
A couple similar, we're really interested in that on the next version of student information systems and the role that AI can play in those, in terms of pulling together all those various data sources that we have to be both analyzed and predictive around when you look at student success and student absences, and similarly around patterns that we're seeing. And so that's of interest to us. And a little bit on some of the work that Ottawa Catholic's already done, we'll be rolling out this fall in terms of specific lessons at each grade level around AI literacy from K to 12, and ensuring that there is some common experience that all of our students are having. We spend a lot of time saying this experience will look different in each class, all too true, and that depending on the individual teacher and their passions, but we want to ensure that there is some commonness amongst all that all our students have. And starting in September, that's something that we're investing a lot of time and energy into, ensuring that we have age appropriate, grade appropriate experiences for all of our students. And beginning just to also play around with the idea of turning on the AI tools for students, in maybe that their teachers haven't turned on yet for them. And so that's something where right now it's the Magic School AI is dependent on your teacher saying we're using it. And we're just contemplating on whether or not that is the model that we have going forward, or do we just turn it on for students regardless of whether or not their teacher is engaging with it in their school setting.
Yeah, I want to go back to Tom. You guys, from the onset, you were clear that well-being is a part of this. And I know, Chris, for you guys, you've talked about that, but you've also talked about the role of physical literacy and how these two things merge. So I'm all in on it. I know it's a complicated conversation. And again, Tom, even I remember talking to one of your team members who on a parent night made the statement that we would love to see AI reduce screen time. Again, is that asking too much? Maybe. I don't know if we can do it. So I don't know if there's, and again, I won't even get into the whole challenge of using it as a mental health tool, which obviously brings with it a lot of dangers, challenges, and so forth. But just in terms of well-being and physical literacy, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you guys are thinking about that, because I think that's just such an important thing that can engage a lot of people who otherwise might just think it's another thing that's taken us down a bad road in society.
Who did you want to start on that one?
You go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thanks. In our messaging to parents, when we were looking at embracing AI, one of the things we said right away is it's about the humane and ethical use of AI. But at the same time, if we have a choice for our students to be outside learning in nature and through Indigenous teaching practices, that's our preference. We want that before we want to see them sitting behind a computer. So it is about balance. And if we get it right, instead of a student spending hours and hours surfing endlessly and scrolling on screens, they're going to have targeted interventions with the AI and get the information a lot quicker. So we're hoping it decreases screen time. I have no anecdotal or research to back that yet, but that's our vision, is less time on screen, more targeted intervention, get the information you need, and then focus on those collaborative, creativity, critical thinking skills. But certainly learning outdoors is just as important, if not more, than sitting behind a computer screen. We do have coaches that are using AI to help them with their coaching. We have phys ed teachers that are using it to come up with learning activities. So it is being used in different ways to enhance physical fitness and physical literacy as well.
We don't talk about AI unless we talk about physical literacy together. Those are the two two key innovative priorities that we have in our district. And we keep mentioning them together. One, because there is this interconnected piece of them, and two, to make sure that we're true to this, so that we don't just want kids in front of screens. And I, like Tom, believe that there is the opportunity to see AI actually reduce some screen time. I'll be interested to track this, because it just seems as though a lot of the screen time we spend in schools is fiddling with PowerPoint presentations, or figuring out what font size I'm going to do, or how I'm going to make the video fit or edit. But it's actually not in the creative process. And those are a lot of things that AI can do. And so it will be interesting to see, as this moves forward, if actually we can free up some time away from screens that let us actually get outdoors. And maybe if we do this right over the next year to 2 years, we actually use AI more and use screens less. And I think that's a worthy goal for us to move towards as we integrate AI.
And thinking about this directly in relation to teacher burnout and so forth, I know every time I go somewhere, and you both would have the same experience talking to folks at your boards, is who's found AI has saved them time. Everybody raises their hand that's using it in any kind of way. So then the question becomes like, how are you saving that time? And if you're a teacher that feels like I work too many hours, maybe you don't have to work as many hours. And so again, I know both of you guys, that's a big issue, is recruitment and retention and costs, sub costs, and all those kind of things that come as a result sometimes of teachers just being overwhelmed. Again, I don't know if you have if there's any sort of, I don't want to say data, but even anecdotal evidence to suggest that may be something that is worth continuing to amplify and focus on, because maybe you're seeing some early signs in that. I don't know.
I think that's what's different than every technology that we've experienced over the last 25 years. When you ask people, is this saving you time? They say yes. And no other technology that we've embraced over the since Web 2.0, where you ask people, is it saving them time? They go, I'm spending my time differently. But actually people have concrete examples about whether that's around creating a lesson or building report cards or getting feedback back to students quickly, or they have so many really quick examples that they have across subject area, across grades. And that's why I think there is probably more excitement and momentum around this than anything else we've seen.
I know, Tom, you and I talked before we talked about AI. I remember the first time I reconnected with you, it might have been on the podcast you and I did. You talked about the big challenges in Ontario, Ottawa Catholic for just on-call teachers and stuff. So I don't know. Hey, again, I don't want to try to say that there's been a correlation, but again, I don't anything anecdotally that gives you hope to think this might help us.
One of our subgroups that we introduced some of the tools to were we call NTIP, New Teacher Induction Program. So it's our first year teachers. It always frustrated me that we have brand new teachers who are teaching a grade level or a subject, and they're spending so much time lesson planning when they're in a board with 3,500 other teachers that have done this for many years. So it showed that we need to improve the ability for people to share resources, share lessons, share learning activities. And some of these AI tools are doing that right away. They can go into the tool using Brisk to create learning activities. They don't necessarily have to find their mentor. It's also helped with classroom management. So often a new teacher, a new educator doesn't want to call their mentor and say, I'm struggling with this student. Here's the profile. Here's the behavior. I don't know what to do. It's great if they'll do that and they'll get some expertise, but now they can put it into a school AI sidekick and get that answer. And the answers are really good. They're really good at saying, here's some possibilities to try. So I do think we're providing assistants that are helping veteran, but also younger educators. And certainly our administrators are seeing the time saving when they're using it for things like newsletter generation or idea generation. They've already shared with us it's saving a lot of time for them. The challenge in education is everyone is overcommitted so much. They're saving them time, but then they're filling it right away with another task. So they're not using it for well-being. They're not saving time in going out for a walk or saving time in going home earlier. They're saving time to do more tasks that they weren't getting to. So that's still a challenge in education.
No, I love that. And again, I'm waiting to work with the board that wants to start really tracking that, because I want to watch that really closely, because I think that's a big key one. Again, both of you guys have gotten lots of lauding and applause for all the work you've done. And I know you're overall pretty satisfied with the work you are and where you're going, but I don't know if there's anything, if you were starting this today, that you might do differently for people. And not so much advice, because I know you guys have been very good at advising people, but is there anything in your journey that said, we probably would have done this differently? And again, maybe not. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, no, I think we're pretty happy with the way we went, or if there's something that you might have done differently.
So I would do some things that Chris has done with West Vancouver. So some things that they did differently than our board is, if I were to start over, we started on our own working with ALP. So that was great that we brought ALP in. They were a great help, advanced learning partnerships, but we didn't have other districts there. I'm envious of West Vancouver. They've got a network of other districts that they worked with their ministry as well. So that's one thing I would do differently. I would also limit the number of tools that we started with. We started with lots and lots of pilots, but we were spread thin, trying all kinds of pilots. So I would decrease the number of tools we were working with. And the other thing I would try and do a little bit differently is, we're now into year 2, or our full year of implementation. Some of our enterprise folks, so I mentioned HR and finance, they're still waiting. They're waiting for extra help and assistance. I would make sure that in year 1, we included bringing in extra help, not just the academic side, but the non-academic side. So those are 3 things we would do differently in our board.
That's good. Chris, what about you guys? You got it perfect, right?
I think I'll borrow one that I think Tom, when he started talking about having their group of English teachers, bringing them together, that's something we're starting to do now. But like, we knew coming in 18 months ago, which areas were going to be the challenging, in particular high school teachers in certain subgroups. We should have gone right to them rather than just pretending that, it'll be fine for everybody. And now we're catching up to that. And so I wish we had done a better job about, like, we knew actually where some of the soft spots were in terms of rolling this out, and actually gone and worked directly with them right up front. So it doesn't feel like now we're playing a bit of catch up. And I referenced the other point earlier that we've also now come to working with our Indigenous education councils in the Indigenous communities, and we probably would have done that a year ago if we had thought through that. Probably that's right at the beginning rather than 18 months into the work.
I know you guys both talk about the fact that you made a decision to go with these particular tools, but you're actually hoping that other boards choose different tools so that there's a little more of a pool to compare it to, because you only know what you know. And some of these tools are so brand new that there's just not a lot of evidence to say which one you're going to stick with. So hopefully that's coming as we continue to grow some network learning. But so as we wrap up, everybody, again, besides Ottawa Catholic and West Vancouver school boards, who else should people call and say, hey, check out what they're doing? So I don't know if you have 1 or 2 other boards that you think are starting to do some interesting work. Let me keep them to Canada. But what other Canadian boards are you thinking are doing some interesting work, and people should be paying attention to them? Chris, I'll start with you.
I'll highlight a couple that are part of our BC network. I know them the best. One is Coquitlam, only because they're all in with Microsoft, and that's just a totally different approach than what we've taken. And most of our boards are pretty invested in Microsoft in terms of our other parts of our organization. And just to see where that goes, I'm interested to follow their journey in terms of them being so tight with that tool, because there's some real logic behind that, because it integrates so well with everything else that we do. And so interested to follow them. Also interested what I've seen coming out of Langley in another BC board here, just around assessment. They got out early with some assessment scales in different subject areas, and we've borrowed some of their work. And so interesting to see how that develops as well.
Those weren't the boards I thought you were going to mention, so that's good. And I would add to the Coquitlam story, one of their advantages is because they have such a close relationship with Microsoft. They're getting insider information as to some of the tools that are there. So if you're wondering what's happening with Microsoft and education, Coquitlam's probably the board for you to reach out to. Tom, one or two other boards that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, I'm going to shift the answer to you, Dean, a little bit from boards to networks.
Okay. All right.
For me, it's some of the networks that we're part of, because we hear then from multiple boards. So I learn about BC because we're part of the C21 network, Dr. Michael Fullen's Canadian Alliance for Districts, that we meet every 6 weeks roughly. So we're hearing from multiple boards. We're part of the Global Cities for Education network as well. So we have an opportunity about every 5 to 6 weeks to hear what's happening globally with Ontario through ALP and yourself, Dean, doing some work with different districts. So I think we always learn when we network with other districts. People say, can you share the blueprint? And I'm very quick to say there is no blueprint. You do what works for your board.
That's right.
And then when what's working for your board, share that out, because there's pieces that we will pick up. So as many networks involved with AI that we can be part of, we're all in, and that's helping us to continue to grow.
I appreciate it. I mean, Tom, you guys were the first work that we had a chance to work with in Ontario. I'm so grateful. But again, Chris's part of the model in BC that was the cohort model was, as soon as that sort of happened, I was like, oh yeah, this is how we're supposed to do it. This is how this works. Because nobody really, I mean, as much time as I spend reading and listening, my expertise is like slightly above everybody else's, but collectively, there's a lot of really rich conversations. And then uncovering the issues that, oh, that one's coming. We haven't thought about that one, but we better get prepared for it and can help. That's great. So again, I'll finish with one last question. As again, I said, I've got go-to resources that keep me up to speed. Both of you do not play a passive role in this. You're always trying to engage and learn about what's the latest and greatest in AI. So maybe give us either something you're reading, a newsletter, somebody that you follow that helps you keep up to speed. Tom, I'll start with you.
There's lots. So just to name a couple, Tom DeCord's newsletter, I really find thought-provoking. And it's another Tom as well, Tom Vander Ark from Getting Smart. So they stretch my thinking a little bit. I subscribe to all kinds of AI newsletters, which are more, here's what's current. But those two I mentioned really stretch my thinking. Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook has great resources for teachers. He also has an administrators network, so I follow those. I mentioned ALP a few times today. Amos is the different podcasts that are out there and webinars. Amanda Bickerstaff from AI for Education. They have some great resources. And then just everyday reading. So several books on AI that I've been reading. I've been reading lots of AI books, but some are very practical, like Dan Fitzpatrick's Infinite Education talks about steps and strategies for leading AI change. But there's some other ones like Alexander Karp's The Technological Republic, which are big picture, make you think about what did we learn from the atomic bomb and what that technology did in the hands of good versus not so good. So those are lots of areas of thinking, and there's a whole pile I could list off.
Scary sometimes?
Yes, very much.
Yes.
And I think that's what people say. It's like the calculator. I'm very quick to say, no, it's nowhere near like calculator.
Nobody was scared of the calculator.
Well, this is something AI and warfare and AI and what it could be doing with robotics. It is a different level, but I don't want people to be fearful. I want people to say, what does it mean for me in K-12? And that takes it away from the conversations about robotics. But we have to always be thinking about what's next.
And it always helps me to say, you know what, if plagiarism is our biggest problem, we're in good shape. That is not our biggest problem. And yet at the same time, if that's what that's their entry point, all right, let's start there. We'll help you figure that one out. But this is pretty big. Chris, what are your go-to spots?
Yeah, I would add just on LinkedIn, Tom mentioned Leon's work out of Australia, Furz's work. I think he's a great person to follow. Their work that's another jurisdiction that more broadly we're following in terms of the work happening there. I think they're doing some really interesting progressive work. And similarly, I try to balance those sort of outside of education, big thinkers about what AI is doing versus people which is great, but also then I'm trying to find more concrete folks who are actually like doing things in a classroom that you can go, yeah, you could actually do this tomorrow in your class. And I think some of those use cases that we've mentioned before that are on the C21 website, I think those are great places to go as well.
Thank you guys both. This was good. I was glad we did this because, again, as I say, I get all kinds of queries about my relationship with both of your boards and what's happening in your boards. I thought, why not just have you guys come on and share what's happening? So this will really help people. And again, I think just building that network, I appreciate that kind of messaging around this stuff. But congratulations on all the work you're doing and all the best, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Nice to see you, Chris.